How many people in this room understand what nanotechnology is? Well, about 5%. Walter. So it's the next thing. We spent 25 years creating a multi-trillion-dollar industry. What is it?
Nanotechnology. Nanotechnology is things at a very, very small scale, a thousandth of the size of the width of a human hair. And at nanoscale, that's what they call it when you get really small, the properties of materials are different. A material that might be green in large capacity, if you can get it down to the nano size, might be red. It might behave differently. Essentially stringing molecules together. If you can string molecules together and make a tube of nanotechnology that is so small you couldn't tell by my holding my fingers together, it would look like they were together, and you can put it into polymers and elastomers, you can change the properties. It's like putting steel rebar into concrete. Concrete has strength, but you don't build bridges with concrete alone. You put rebar in it to give it real strength. Nanotubes are like rebar, and you can take polymers and elastomers and change their properties so they are more stretchable, they're stronger, they last longer, they're harder. Already one company, Nano Composites, that's using RICE technology, that's an independent company, is using it for gaskets and seals so that pumps last longer, with the ultimate goal to put them in blowout preventers. Now, blowout preventers were in the news not just that many months ago, and they're extraordinarily expensive and extraordinarily important, as we've learned. If you can make a blowout preventer so it's more reliable, so that it can be maintained more easily and work more effectively, you've literally saved the energy industry hundreds of millions of dollars. There's every manner of application for things that are that small.
So the industry was created here. How do we keep it here?
You know, a great example is what's going on in Monterrey, Mexico right now. They have an innovation park with about $300 million worth of investment and about 20 buildings, and it has everything from incubators to large US corporations that have created facilities to do research and commercialization, to 4 or 5 of our universities in the US have built down there. And they're going to their most wealthy families and putting together 16 of the most wealthy families to focus on doing what Research Triangle Park did 50 years ago, to focus on how to build the community. The solution is we need to get together as a community for the benefit of the community to license this intellectual property and keep it here. And those that do the licensing are going to find the commercial opportunities that develop extraordinary. And there's going to be a huge payback for those, but it's got to start with us focusing on keeping those jobs here.
So what's the Houston Technology Center's role in that? And this is not an advertisement, it's actually a real question.
Sounded like a great opportunity for an advertiser to me. No, what we do is, and the company I mentioned with the single-wall nanotubes is a client of the Houston Technology Center. You can have great technologists, but whoever said build a better mousetrap and the world will be the path to your door was either a communist or an idiot, because nothing is further from the truth. I mean, there's a lot of pretty good, okay products that are successful against products that are technically much better, simply because people understand how to turn them into business. So the Houston Technology Center role is to work with companies like Nano Composites so they understand how to be successful business people. One of our graduate companies, Bill, is Nanospectral Biosciences. Nanospectral Biosciences is using gold nanoshells. Now remember the size, very small, to attack cancer. And they are going to make chemotherapy obsolete.
Right. So last night at dinner we were talking, and there's an interesting connection between Gulf Winds and what they do and technology. And I'd like you to share sort of the role that technology has played in the evolution of Gulf Winds.
Well, when Ron and I started Gulf Winds, I think technology for us is if we were lucky enough to be able to afford to buy a computer for one of our desks. That's about the extent of our technology in the early going, but we certainly learned very quickly that to differentiate ourselves from our competitors, and we're in a business that's not normally considered to be, high tech, and it's a very competitive business, and it's all usually about rates and service, and as most business is. But we realized early on that to be successful, we would have to have systems in place that were good at tracking containers, tracking people's products, good inventory control systems, and those sorts of things. And we made a very hard decision early on when we couldn't even afford it, when he and I weren't even taking a paycheck yet, to reinvest in the company and start buying those types of systems. Now, we were early in our career. And again, to me, a computer's a computer. I can barely turn one on and turn it off even today. But we had some bright young people that we brought in. We tried buying off the shelf, and we went through all those learning and failing and this, and we finally decided that to really get where we need to be would be to do it ourselves, to bring in our own programmers and develop our own systems, and that's what we've done. I think for a company of our size today, we've got 5 or 6 full-time IT staff now, 2 people that are full-time programmers, constantly updating and changing our operating systems so that we stay ahead of the curve and stay ahead of our competitors. One of the things that separates us in our business is our ability to identify and track customers' containers, whether they ship in one or whether they ship in thousands. We have the capability at any point in time of the day to track as many as 8, 10, 12, 15,000, it really doesn't matter, containers, anywhere from the time that container is put on the ship in Shanghai, China, till it's on its voyage across the ocean to wherever it's delivered, to the final distribution point, and back to the empty container back to the steamship line. We can tell a customer, and better yet, because of our dashboard application that we developed, that we allow customers to use a portion of that they can do it themselves. And it just makes we have customers that use our system to run their labor, to hire their labor and run their distribution centers. So that's one of the examples.
And that is both a labor savings for you,
absolutely,
and a service for your customers that you couldn't do without technology.
Could not do that.
A couple things from an infrastructure and opportunities perspective. One question for each of you. So for Steve, the question that people have concern about the port, when you're talking about going from 2 million to 4 million containers, I've written down Barber's Cut. It's like 4 lanes, right? Mm-hmm. And we were talking last night, there's sort of one way in and one way out. From an infrastructure standpoint, how is the community going to be able to handle that kind of growth?
Well, you've asked the question that really is nobody has the answer to that right now. And there are a number of really good people, really good organizations that have transportation task forces that are working on that. I am just delighted that we have a county judge and Judge Ed Emmett, with his extensive transportation background, who has recognized that problem and is really leading the way for the citizens of Harris County through the Harris County and Galveston Association, the Economic Alliance Port Region Group, and a number of other organizations that are dedicating and have transportation task forces trying to solve that problem, because you just don't automatically blink and all of a sudden we have new highways and new railroads. And you have to consider that with the budget situation the way it is now, the Texas Highway Fund is broke, the National Highway Fund is broke. We know where the budget is. We're in debt. It's going to cost billions of dollars. And when I say billions, I mean just to keep us where we need to be across the nation, we need an influx of about $500 billion just to keep our roadways and our bridges where they are now. So I honestly don't have the answer to that, but a lot of good people are trying to figure it out. It could revolve around having dedicated highway lanes coming out of the port that are maybe designated. Because keep in mind, I didn't have a chance to show you on the slides there. One of the great things about the Port of Houston is about roughly half of the Port of Houston's cargo is what we call discretionary cargo, meaning that it doesn't have an origin or destination here in Houston. It's going someplace else. So that's the traffic that we've got to figure out. How do we get that out of Houston effectively and efficiently? Rail service certainly is an idea. Some people have talked about elevated highway system. Great ideas. We've heard talk about last night. We heard about some tunneling opportunities. But this stuff all costs dollars. It all costs money, and we don't have it right now. So I will say this to you, though, every one of you in here, you have a role to play, because our representatives in the state and as well as at the federal level need to be hearing from every one of you that you do not want and will not stand by to have infrastructure development be put on the back burner, that you want whatever dollars are available, they need to be used to keep our highways and bridges up to speed and build the new ones that we need to accommodate the roughly twice the amount of volume of cargo we're handling now.
So the volume's coming, whether or not we put the infrastructure in place to handle it. That's pretty scary.
It is. It is.
Sounds like an opportunity.
It's a good opportunity. It's a great problem to have, but be prepared for some bottlenecks and some. And let me put it in a bigger perspective, and it kind of gets back to those big ships, because if we can't take advantage of those operating efficiencies that the bigger ships bring, people will make decisions to send that business someplace else, okay? The big ships already go primarily to Europe. That's the biggest trade lane already. And then some of them peel off and they'll come down to the East Coast. What we're hoping is to be able to bring some more of those into the Gulf. And if we, and besides infrastructure, there's also the issue of harbor dredging. I mean, the Houston Ship Channel, they started dredging that in 1839. They're still dredging it today. We're about 40 foot of water in the ship channel. We need to be 45 feet, and we're between the 40 and 45 foot mark, which will get us to maybe the 7,000 to 8,000 TEU ships. But to be really efficient, it would be nice to get our water depth to 48 to 50 feet, but that costs a lot of money. And here Congress comes in once again. We have funds to do that. Back in 1978, Congress passed the harbor maintenance tax, which was a tax placed on importers, money that would go specifically to a harbor maintenance fund, and that money was to be used to keep our rivers and harbors dredged. Well, Congress, in its infinite stupidity, see that as a cash cow, and we don't get the money. They use it for other purposes. They use it for, we just sent a delegation led by Captain Bill Deal and the Port Bureau and people from the Port Authority to Washington to make a case for give us our money. We need to dredge the ship channel. And it's a political game. But it has serious economic consequences for every one of us in this room.
Here's a question for Walter from one of our audience members. It says, my software engineers all reside outside of Texas, which is not ideal. Where do I find young, passionate software engineers outside of the talent at Rice in Houston?
I think it's fair to say that Rice isn't the only place for great software engineers. University of Houston, Texas A&M has some terrific things, and in fact, there's 12 major institutions in our region, and almost all of them have great computer science programs. In addition to that, there are I would look at Johnson Space Center, because there's going to be, as I said earlier, $1 billion budget cut, and there's going to be spare capacity, and there are some terrific software engineers that are anticipating the problems they're going to have. I would certainly advertise down at Johnson Space Center. So there's every manner. And I guess the last thing I'd say is, as much as I encourage all of our young people to get as much education as they can, when I started the first business I started, de novo, from the ground up, I hired a guy that hadn't finished college, and he was an absolute superb software engineer. So there's lots of sources. Houston Community College and the other community colleges have programming courses. So, if you need a really top-notch systems architect, well, you should pay for it and get somebody with a great education and maybe great experience at one of the oil companies. But if you need someone who's going to do commercial programming, don't feel you have to go for a college grad.
The person asked this question is the question is the difference between Long Beach and Houston as a destination and as a port, and why Houston?
Well, Long Beach today is the premier port in the country for the Trans-Pacific trade lanes. Ideally, the shipping lines would love to do nothing but just service the West Coast from Asia because it's the shortest route. A typical steamship line today running about an 8,000 TEU vessel can service the Trans-Pacific trade with about 6 ships. If they want to service the East Coast, they have to add additional 4 ships. If they want to come into the Gulf, they're going to have to add at least another ship or maybe even 2 ships to get to the Gulf to maintain a weekly competitive service to get that done. So ideally, the West Coast represents the fastest, the most efficient, and today, from an ocean rate standpoint, the cheapest route to get to the U.S. from Asia. But somewhat like Houston, the West Coast is very similar to what I mentioned about Houston a while ago. Over half of the West Coast cargo that comes in is put on trains. Their cargo is also what we call discretionary cargo, meaning it doesn't stay in the Long Beach, LA area. That cargo is put on land bridge trains that take it to Chicago, they bring it down to Houston. In some cases, they take it all the way to New York. So Long Beach is a gateway port for Asian cargo coming in. Houston can still play that same role, and why Houston is because Long Beach has become so congested. Long Beach and LA have immense labor problems, unlike what we have here. You can't hardly pick up a paper or a shipping journal without seeing some sort of disruption on the West Coast. The reason that you have Home Depot and Walmart here in Baytown today is because of the problems that they had with the IWLA in Long Beach back in 2002. That is exactly why Walmart used to bring in every single box of their Asian cargo through Long Beach. Home Depot did the same thing. So many of the big box retailers realize that Long Beach, LA is a bottleneck. And that's why they've elected to opt for other distribution outlets. So Houston has an opportunity to fill that role because with the Panama Canal now widening, we will be competitive with the bigger ships to bring them here. And Houston is again a natural gateway. Never mind that we have a huge population here. We have a large consuming. All of you probably saw the census numbers. I mean, we're the fastest growing state in the country, in the region, for the last 10 years. So the population centers are coming here. So there's going to be a demand for those products coming that we all love to buy from Target and Walmart that's in all of our houses every day. So so that's why Houston will continue to emerge as an alternative. West Coast is not going away. It's a major trade lane, but there's only so much capacity that they can handle, and they're pretty much at it right now.
Walter, what is the academic community or the university base doing and not doing to support the growth of technology as a long-term industry for Houston?
You know, Bill, that's an area where we have some really good news. Since the beginning of academic institutions in the Middle Ages and before, academic institutions were focused on scholarship and research. And in the last dozen years or so, our local academic institutions have gradually moved to understanding that commercializing the research, getting economic benefits, is an important part of their mission as well. It used to be at most of our colleges and universities that if you worked on commercializing some wonderful new technology, that is bringing that research the last mile so it actually makes a difference for patients and customers, you would never get tenure, because you didn't have time to write enough scholarly papers and to demonstrate your research at scholarly organizations. Now, I believe Texas A&M, Bill, was the first college that actually included a tenure track that included toward commercialization. The other colleges have followed suit on that. The governor of Texas actually pushed for that in the Emerging Technology Fund program. And in fact, now when they recruit heads of research, the vice provosts of research, and welcome, I have the privilege of serving on the search committee for the vice president of research at the University of Houston. When they select those people, they're looking at people like me who I desperately care about commercialization and asking us to participate in the selection so that it is not only an outstanding scholar, but someone who's going to make sure that research benefits the community and the country.
That's great. One last question for Steve. What the heck is the deal with this cruise terminal?
That's probably a better. I ought to throw that ball to Keith myself there. Well, it's you know, I don't work for the port, so I want to be careful that I don't say anything out of school here. I think it's safe to say that the port recognizes that that just is a venture and an investment that just didn't work out. It's a beautiful terminal. Unfortunately, we've not been successful in attracting a major cruise line here on a regular basis. I will give Galveston their due. They beat us to the punch on that, and have managed to keep those vessels over there. But you know, my philosophy on that is it's a beautiful terminal. It's there. The investment's been made, and I'm just going to use a personal example of, and Ron knows how I feel about this. You know, it takes a long time to get a major piece of business in today's competitive environment. Some of our major customers that we have today, you know, it took 4 or 5, 6 years of calling on them, making that pitch, going back, don't take no for an answer. And I like to think that the Port Authority you know, it's there. That their time will come. But in the meantime, I'm afraid it's a black spot on our eye and a sore point with the commissioners, I might add. But we just have to work through it.
And by way of disclaimer, many of you know that I'm a very avid golfer. This is not my question. So Walter, how might nanotechnology improve my golf game? And how quickly might that technology be developed?
You know, Bill, that actually is a terrific question because it's a great way to demonstrate the role that nanotechnology is going to play in our lives and building that trillion-dollar industry. You mentioned Walmart and Target, where people like to shop for products. Well, nanotechnology is going to have a big impact, Steve, on the products. And think about this. Think about the shank of your golf club. And what happens if the performance of the shank of the golf club could be improved? Think about what would happen if you can take that golf ball and change the properties of the golf ball by putting single-wall nanotubes into the core of the golf ball to give it maybe more lift or more distance or more spin. So it really is going to have a huge impact. And you think about, take that idea and take that to all of the different industries that you work in. Every one of you, and Steve, you used a great example about how you applied information technology in spite of the costs that are associated with it. But you know, you wouldn't be successful business people if you weren't using technology already in some interesting ways. But please open your mind and open your perspective to not just the technologies that you're used to, but the new technologies that are coming forward. 80% of you will be able to get a competitive advantage if you figure out and you watch what's going on in nanotechnology. Those of you that use a lot of fuel, and certainly at the port they use a lot of fuel, the properties of fuel are going to change, and the remediation of fuel and the efficiency of fuel is going to change because of breakthroughs in the energy industry. Bill, not just in nanotechnology, but just standard breakthroughs in better ways of drilling, finding the fuel, remediating it, saving the cost of remediation of it. Technology has changed our lives in the last 50 years. Imagine what things were like 50 years ago. Imagine how different they're going to be in 50 years. And it is to the benefit of your companies to constantly be alert to it. And if you want to benefit your community as well, please be alert to what's going on, certainly at the ship channel, which is, as you point out, the second largest economic driver, but also at places like the Houston Technology Center and the MIT Enterprise Forum. Get involved, you'll learn and see what's going on, you'll be able to contribute to what our mission is, Bill, and you know as one of our board members, to the mission of the Houston Technology Center, is that Houston be globally recognized as an international center for technology innovation and commercialization on a worldwide basis within the next 24 months. So if you can help us, we solicit your help. Bill, thanks so much to you and Kenneth. What a great breakfast.
Thank you.
So
Thank you,
much.
guys. Please join me in thanking our panel.